Hey guys, today we're going to look at the Solver Best Ball Explorer tool. After you finish uploading, you can head to Portfolio to look at the overview of your drafts. You can check out this cumulative drafts graph, which shows the cumulative drafts over time to check out when you put your most volume in. You can also look at this draft position distribution, which shows the frequency of each pick that you've had in your drafts. We can also look at contest breakdown, which just shows the different contests you've drafted in and how that makes up your portfolio. For example, most of the drafts that I've done so far have been on the $10 big board. We can look at our portfolio exposure. This is just a more in-depth version of what Underdog offers. We can look at the fees, the exposures, and we can also look at how many teams we have these players on. You can go through by position, and you can compare between platforms as well. Now if we look at exposure, under the exposure tab, this is going to be an even more detailed look at the information that we have available for our players. So it'll show you the basics like exposure percent and feed percent, but it's also going to show you your average pick, the current ADP, as well as ADP and draft capital differences. And this is important in measuring your team. Draft capital is extremely important to look at, and if you hover over these options, they'll give you a little explanation of what they are. So the draft capital is the draft capital value associated with the player's current ADP and the draft capital used to select that player. Um, More on draft capital, you can check out this draft capital explain tab, and that uses Mike Leone from Established that runs draft capital metrics, and that's going to give you information about your rosters that is useful in determining the value that you have selected them at. And you can further dive into these players' information by clicking on this View tab, and that's going to take us to Player View. So if I click on someone like T. Higgins, I can check out their draft capital change over time and where I picked them in the drafts. And it's also going to show you important metrics like your player stacks with them. So on teams that have T. Higgins, I have selected Joe Burrow half the time. You can see the count here, and Jamar Chase twice. And you can also look at non-teammate stacks. So I might do this to check to see if I've, like when I draft Saquon, I always just end up clicking on T. Higgins. Like I don't have enough drafts to really determine that, but if you find yourself doing that, then your exposures can get a little fragile because you kind of want to spread that out sometime. Another player stacks that we can look at are the week 15, 16, and 17 bringbacks. So once the schedule comes out, you can click on these options and it'll show you the opposing players for the given player that you selected. And you can kind of get a sense of the bringbacks to the stacks that you have on your teams for the best ball playoff weeks. And for all these stats, you can filter by contest or by given team. Next, we can look at drafted teams. So this is going to be all the teams that you've uploaded, and you can dive into each one individually, but you can look at the macro ideas from the outside here. A lot of important information. Your stacks, your build, draft capital, ADP difference. You can sort and see which teams you kind of reached for a little bit, or players of ADPs have shifted quite a lot. And on the other side, you can also see what kind of values you've gotten that may not be available now. And you can dive into each of those by clicking on View, and it's going to show you all sorts of stats. It's going to show you your draft capital allocation, the stacks that you have, as well as some of the ADP and draft capital gains or losses. And you can also take a look at your roster here and see which kind of values, where you found those values at. And once the schedule comes out, it'll also show your stacks, and you can toggle mini stacks as well if you want more than just your quarterback stacks and the bringbacks. We can also look at the draft positions again, the pick tendencies given around, the macro team builds here, kind of where you're gravitating towards, and your team exposures. So that's all the information for evaluating your portfolio. There's also ADP resources, which are are just looking at the broader contests in general, not related to your team. So if you select player ADPs, it'll take you to this player ADPs tool, which measures the ADP change and draft capital change of all the players on all the sites. You don't have to have uploaded to view the other sites' ADP changes. You can move the start date to wherever you want to measure the ADP change. And you could also toggle the rounds to just see certain rounds if you'd like. So if I want to see the first and second round ADP fallers or risers, you can kind of take a look at who's moving up in a given round. And finally, we have team stacks, which shows the ADP values of the top fantasy players for all the teams. And you can add RBs into this list as well to see what kind of draft capital you have to sink into to get these specific team stacks. Best Ball Explorer is currently free to use. Head to thesolver.com and give it a try for yourself and see how it can help refine your draft process and uncover what works best for you. You can also let us know if you have any questions by emailing us at support@thesolver.com. Thanks, guys.